Let's move to the next level and think then about the accounts you actually decide you wish to address within the territory that you're managing. And all companies, again, have formal account planning procedures and processes that tend to be imposed on the sales guys within them. And as a result, in I would say 9 out of 10 of the companies we do business with, the sales force themselves really aren't that bought into the concept of account planning, account documentation, writing down the strategy that they're going to adopt for an account. And I think that's a shame because, again, as we look at the top 2 or 3% of salespeople that we work with, it's a common trait. They want control over their destiny, and as a result, they tend to put quite a bit of work into documenting and defining the inputs. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not an advocate of a 300-page annual account plan. I'm a small amount of paper, but crisply documented kind of guy. And I tend to find that our most successful sales clients have the same set of traits. So they look to document the key elements of strategy and intelligence around an account that can best help them attack, approach, and drive success in that account. A couple of key things, though, that they tend to do differently than the rest of the sales world. So let's make sure we understand. Documenting an account plan, an approach to an account based on clear strategy to whatever methodology your company chooses to work with, it's a good idea. Map the relationships, the key players, the imperatives of the businesses, and document those things so you can get a view of the playing field within the account. But here's what the real high performers do that is a bit outside the box. They do 2 things. One, they have a strong tendency to use other people to help them improve and work on the plan they've built. And that usually means that they're reviewing their account plans on a very regular basis, often as regularly as once every 2 weeks or once a month. Usually with people both from within their own team, but also people from around their business who may support the account. They might be engineers on the account. They might be financial analysts and people from within their company. And what they're really looking for is an objective view, devil's advocacy, creativity, to help them really hone their strategic approach to their account. And remember, what we're looking for most often are creative approach routes to get to executives that we may not have touched before. We might be looking to understand who may be influencers in that account that we hadn't spotted yet. We may be looking for creative constructions of our own solution set that can solve real business needs for the accounts we deal with. So documenting that type of information and then getting people from outside of the account to help you sell, to help you define the strategy, is a critical behavior that we see in high performers. When you look at the software industry, a number of people have researched what the top 20 software companies do to really drive high performance sales. There's one factor that comes out clearer than any other factor in those companies' success. It's team selling. So the software companies that have driven huge success in their market from nothing all agree that they did so because they team sold. And from an account planning perspective, that would tend to reinforce why we see successful sales guys being those who have the type of behaviors that means they involve other people in building the plans for those accounts. So, don't learn from me. Learn from the guys out there and the companies out there that have driven huge success in very short periods of time, and think about who else you can involve in your account planning process. I said there were 2 things, and the second thing is related very strongly to the first item. The second thing that very high-performing salespeople that we work with in the field tend to do as they build their account plans out and follow through on strategy is they involve the client in building that strategy. It seems a pretty obvious thing to do, but if you ask yourself how often you've shared with your customer your proposed strategy to sell to them, well, 1, it's a pretty ballsy thing to do. 2, we worry about what the client might say. But they know we're selling to them. So what the top performers have found is that by involving the client in the process, well, they certainly get some clarity. They certainly get some depth. And it tends to improve the quality of the strategy they're putting together. There's a number of ways you can do it. You can be very formal. And this might simply be a very good excuse of engaging the client in the first place. Formal means you might hold a an account review meeting on a monthly basis, and you may begin to formally invite certain people from the client, so it's exposure for them, but also involvement in the account plan for you. I've seen that work very well for some of the service providers we work for in the telecommunications space, as they've invited along executives from key clients, giving credibility to the lower level contacts that they did have in the company, who've now been responsible for bringing an executive into the organization, but also really deepening the strategy that they've been able to follow through at the client. And you know, it's funny, clients will very often be the most creative people in the room when it comes to deciding how you should sell to them. And I've seen some real extraordinary conversations happen because of that. Second thing you can do, and it's a lot more subtle, a lot more political, is very subtly, in each customer meeting, test and build strategy with them. And do that informally as you engage each client while you're driving your strategy. And top performers, I have to say, will tend to do both. The formal approach may not always be open to you, but certainly on every client engagement, sharing and opening up on strategy is one of those things that you can do that A, builds authenticity into your conversation. After all, they know they're being sold to. So pretending that isn't the fact and hiding from them the strategy you're carrying out isn't necessarily self-serving. 2, it lends you a lot of credibility. And 3, as I said earlier, it's funny, customers are exceptionally creative very often when challenged with helping you to understand how you might more effectively sell to them. So the message here is simple. 1, from the evidence we see from high-performing organizations and high-performing people within those organizations, documenting an account plan, a strategy for the accounts you're going to engage, it's just a no-brainer. The accounts you'll want to engage to drive real success are probably large anyway, are probably quite complex anyway. And as a result, getting your thoughts together in a meaningful way, understanding the steps you're going to take to drive your way through that account, it's critical. And a document just means you don't have to carry all the crap in your brain. In addition to that, though, think through the ways in which you can actively leverage the plan, either with your own colleagues in the business you work in, or with partners, or better still, with the client, to share with them the strategy as you propose it right now, and to glean from them an idea of the appropriate approach that might actually drive success for you as you move forward. One final point on account planning. Having built the documentation, I want to talk a second about mindset. And this is a theme as we engage clients that we see with all of the top performing salespeople we work with. We're told to believe that a salesman's view of the positive potential of everything they ever touch is our greatest asset. The fact that we can see the bright green rolling uplands of opportunity in fact, frankly, every customer engagement, that's supposed to be a good thing. Well, let's just deal with that a second, because what we see when we engage really successful salespeople is quite the opposite. There's a borderline paranoia amongst really successful, high-performing sales guys that is a common theme that runs through all of them. And you know what I think it means? I think it means that these guys are constantly questioning the validity of strategy, the veracity of the information they have around accounts, the reason why things are happening in an account, the worst that could possibly happen if they do something. And it means that the level of detail and coverage that they give to themselves as they engage an account is very high. So they cover all the bases. And I'm going to encourage all of you, as positive as you feel about the company you work for, the product you sell, the view that you're getting from the clients you're engaging, I'm just going to encourage you to try and be a little paranoid. Just play devil's advocate a little bit with yourself and question what it is you're hearing, what it is you think you know, and what it is you think is going to happen next. Don't take anything for granted. The people out there who are really succeeding in sales certainly don't. They're questioning everything. And I'd encourage you to do that at all levels of your planning activity.